welcome back to the Lipoedema podcast. We are your host, Shell.
And Tiana, and tonight we are joined by special guest and nutritionist, Aimee Buchanan. Aimee, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you, Aimee. So we're going to get straight into it. How did you come to learn of lipedema, and when was that?
I was in my early 30s, so I think I was about 32, and I had broken my arm and the swelling just wouldn't go away. And I'd always been looking, researching what was going on in my body prior to that, but I just had come across this word, lipedema, 6 months prior in one of my nutritionist pracky groups. And I kind of just put it in the back of my mind. And then when my arm was broken and it just didn't, it was just so much swelling, I kind of went back and looked back into the pracky groups and looked it all up again. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go to an MLD therapist and not say anything and see if they mention it to me. And they did. And I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I've got an answer. Yeah.
So it was just in your arms, so you hadn't noticed anything in your legs. It was just
No, I do have it in my legs. It's always been my legs. I have it in my arms as well, but it was just because I'd broken my arm that this swelling was just really, bizarre. And I guess it made me investigate my arms more. And they suggested that I go and get a diagnosis, the MLD therapist, and that's what I did.
That is awesome. So had you ever looked at, because you said it's in your legs, had you ever looked for answers for your legs before this arm thing? Had you ever?
Absolutely. It's pretty much why I became a nutritionist. I was always just trying to fix and heal my body. And I just thought that it was to do with my hormones, always. I knew something wasn't right, but I was always swelling and putting on weight really quickly. And I was throughout my whole life, I've been relatively healthy in just, diet-wise. As a child, came from a very healthy family. And I just always was very different to my family, to the rest of my siblings. There's 6 of us all together. And I just knew something wasn't right, but I could never get an answer. Multiple naturopaths, doctors, GPs, and I kind of would put it down to PCOS, but I knew what my knees kind of were doing were not normal, and just had a really kind of bad cellulite. I would, for my age in high school, just to be so slim, but this, really prominent cellulite.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you said so do you have sisters in those 6? Are there sisters and they don't present with lipedema?
I have one. And thankfully she doesn't. But at the same time, F you.
Yeah, how rude.
Why me?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And when do you believe that your lipedema started to develop? When did you notice that your legs were heavier with cellulite and stuff like that?
Puberty. So I really remember my knees always just being this, from high school, just not being normal, like what everyone else's knees looked like, especially because I was so thin. So it was I just couldn't understand why my legs just didn't have as much definition. And I was really sporty as well. So it was, skinnier girls you could see more muscle in their legs and had these, normal, typical knee shapes and definition in their knees. And I remember saying to my mum when I was about 14, why do I have cellulite in my knees? And she was like, oh no, that's just your knee. It's, that's just normal for you. I was like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
And seeing that your sister didn't get, have you seen it anywhere else in your family?
My brother.
Wow.
Yeah. And he isn't diagnosed, but he is retired now, but he was a professional boxer. And we are identical. We're 2.5 years apart, but our bodies, where we put on, weight, how we put on weight, he doesn't have it in his lower legs, just his, and his is more like spots, but he gets it in his thighs and bum and a little bit in his arms. But he looks like he, would train 4 hours a day, and he looks like a like that movie 300, like he's so built and but then he has cellulite on his legs. He gains like 10 kilos in a week when we go on a holiday, so much fluid. And even boxing, without realizing, he just would always have to have his arms down because they were so heavy. And it's not until now we kind of put it together, and just the pain he gets in his legs. And, you know, but we both love to be naked, not in front of each other, but don't want to wear clothes. That would be a little bit weird. I'm sure when we were younger kids, but you know, family of 6 siblings, you're always naked together. But he, you know, could never find a pair of jeans. It was always he could wear Jag, and it was the same things as us ladies. I don't get this so much being stage 1, but his thighs were so big to his waist, and he's, you know, just always had to wear a belt, or he just could never find jeans that fit him. And he gets really sensitive to touch legs. But he just always put it down to, I'd drink alcohol on the weekend and get pain in my legs.
That is fascinating, isn't it? Because
Sure
they
is.
don't say men don't get it. It's just very rare.
Very rare. And
That is fascinating.
They carry the genetic predisposition or something, but they don't express it. It's likely that they don't express it. So, you know, they could have it. They just don't express it.
They don't have those same hormone fluctuations. But I guess your brother, being a fighter and that training and that intensity, I guess that would be enough to put it into effect.
Yeah. And he could always, you know, his boys wear long shorts. Like boys aren't going around, you know, I know in Australia, you know, boys do wear Speedos. But, you know, he always had board shorts on, so it was never something. And he literally has a 6-pack and just always looks so fit. So it never really came out until a few years after my diagnosis that it was like, oh my gosh. So he actually considered surgery. I don't know if he ever will, but he follows exactly how I eat everything, and his is just, you know, really well managed as well.
Oh, that is brilliant to have a sister who can help you out along the way. That's awesome, isn't it? So were there times like of progression for you, like that you can pinpoint? So you noticed that your knees, like particularly as a teenager, were different. Like, are there other times throughout your life that you've seen any progression, or have
Not
you
really?
Not?
It's definitely to the point where if I looked back at my, you know, what my body looked like as puberty to what it is now, there has been a very, very slow progression. In pregnancy, I wasn't too sure if I progressed or not because your body changes so much, but 2 years postpartum now, I can see that I haven't progressed. Definitely body's changed, but it hasn't progressed. But yeah, it's been very slow and gradual. And yeah, I haven't had an explosive episode or something that's really been noticeable that I have progressed.
Oh, that is awesome. So Tiana and I were the same. We didn't notice progression during pregnancy. Like there's been other, like I've had a hysterectomy and that affected me big time. Like that was where I had my biggest progression. But pregnancy wasn't a stage of progression for us. And Tiana's putting it to the test again now.
Second is
pregnant with number 3.
Oh, I don't progress.
I know, and it's a scary thought because it's something you kind of think of every day, isn't it? But it's
absolutely.
We shouldn't stop having babies just because that we might progress.
Very true.
The baby is definitely worth it. Yeah.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, speaking of managing and not progressing, how do you manage your lipedema?
Really, pretty much through diet, as in just not on a diet, but just with the foods that I eat. And I've been able to work out what really works for me, and what causes me inflammation. Low carb, anti-inflammatory, working with my cycle. That's a really big one as well. I think a lot of, us in the community would benefit from that. And yeah, I constantly do like a reset, always working on my detoxification pathways is really something that I notice with not just myself, but with all my clients that we kind of struggle with. Our detox pathways are compromised.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know, the hard thing is like, and I've said it before, I didn't even know that what this lymph system did until I got diagnosed. And now to think of all the detox protocols I've been on over the years and have never addressed my lymph. Like, so I'm having all these green juices and all this gunk, but nothing's getting out because my lymph system isn't being fixed along the way. So that is really important. Like that's,
Yeah.
and I listened to a training session. I was invited to a training session the other day for practitioners. And that was the one thing they said, self-massage for lipedema is the thing. Like we need to get that as part of our routine.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is the difference between stage 1 though and a lot of the other ones. Not the other ones, there's only a couple of other stages, but we don't need as much help with everyone is different, absolutely, but it isn't as compromised. And we can, just by simple movement and just by our breathing is already helping our lymph compared to the later stages that need a lot more. So I have found that no matter what I do, what I do with food. So I could do all that lymph work, but if I'm eating foods that are causing inflammation, it doesn't stop me from gaining weight, from me swelling, from me being inflamed. Whereas I can do it the other way, which I have only noticed that it's kind of more to do with stage 1, that we can control it a lot more with foods and not needing to have so much of those other self-care that we get so sometimes I think bogged down with, because it's so overwhelming having to do 1,000 things that we then don't know which ones to choose because we think we have to do all of them.
All the things,
where it would be better if we just, did try and think of one thing each day to help us. And that can be a simple walk or just putting your legs up on the wall. It doesn't have to be everything all at once.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that about stage 1, because that's why we're pushing for early diagnosis, and being able to not only have to, but not have to do as many things to control it. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's 100%. I think that's one thing that I think it's slowly getting through, but I think, I am still seeing in our community the pushback when someone comes in. And I know that diet culture is a big part of that. And not only that, there's a lot of hurt in our community. So when you see someone that's only a stage 1, or they don't think's even a stage 1, you can't see it, which you can't see a lot in, photos. It can be triggering for some people in the later stage communities to be able to kind of just bring them in and accept and be like, come on, let's just help you, because there's no harm in getting that person to go get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And I can sort of relate. And I was stage 2 when I first discovered I had lipedema, but I was still getting some messaging from the community, mostly the community members who are in later stages and have probably been dismissed by care professionals for so many years and have gotten to that stage through no fault of their own. But the message sort of that I interpreted was, you're not diseased enough to warrant, having a platform or, speaking out or whatever. So I can imagine that would be even more difficult for the stage 1 community.
Yeah, imagine being a size 8 and going to the GP to tell them that you're fat. Like, that's not really going to go down very well. Like, they're just going to tell you that, you've most likely got body dysmorphia, that, it's either in your head. So it's not something I think a lot of us even want to go and discuss with anyone, because also it's a very internal battle, right? Because it's you still look normal, but we don't feel normal.
When I was dancing full time, there'd be numerous occasions I would go to the doctor and be like, I am like puffy. I'm so puffy, and it happened overnight and it stayed for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden I wake up and I'm skinny again, but then I'm puffy, and it's so confusing. Or when I started to incrementally put on weight, they're like, well, you're obviously doing less activity, or your diet's probably changed. I'm like, but it hasn't. I'm doing the same things. And it's really
you almost gaslight yourself.
Oh,
into
100%.
thinking that you have done something differently. Oh, and maybe I didn't move my body as enough. And oh yeah, that tiny little piece of chocolate I ate, that must have made me gain 2 kilos, like
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's so true.
What did I eat?
Yeah. Yeah. Did someone spike my food with sugar? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like,
And now
backstage we would have, we would have a quick snake or something, like, for energy after doing, 13 costume changes in a 2.5-hour show. And my, sidekicks remained a size 6 to 8, and I would, balloon out to a size 12, God forbid, wouldn't fit into my costumes. And it's like, what is going on? I'm eating the same amount.
Yeah. I went over to America with my best friends, and we were there for not even a week, and I couldn't put my dress up on my jumpsuit, my zip on the jumpsuit. And my best friend was like, Aimee, did you buy the wrong size? And I was like, no, I've told you that my body does this, and they're like, but you've actually been eating way better than us. And I think that was the first insight for them into, and I didn't know I had lipedema yet. I got diagnosed, I think nearly 6 months later. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. But they knew I was on this healing journey, but we just didn't know, what was going on. And they were just like, that is so not normal. And then we all were like, let's weigh ourselves when we get home, because we drank every night. We were in Nashville and New Orleans, and, no one put on more than 2 kilos. And there I was, 7 kilos. And I had, eaten, a very beautiful, nourishing, diet while I was over there, with the occasional, some fried chicken from Hattie B's one meal, but nothing that was, that's not going to make you gain that much weight.
It's been a little bit validating for you to have friends that were with you constantly, and you're doing the same things, if not better than them, and your outcome is worse. You're like, there is something clearly different about how my body is functioning.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the way in which you eat and your anti-inflammatory lifestyle, have you found any strange foods that are healthy that give you inflammation? That's a weird food for you.
Again, it can be very dependent on what's going on. I've had times where histamine, I've reacted, quite a lot to histamine, but it's usually a build up. So it will be, if it's a food that I have too many times in a row, that might be that little bit higher kind of carb, but definitely I steer clear. I can eat a little bit of dairy, like a goat's cheese or anything, but I can't have too much of it. I'll notice that would cause me inflammation. And definitely fruit. That's just the other thing. Fruit is, but only if I'm eating a lot of it. So I will cut an apple in half. So that I can still have that amount. But one thing that I really react to is dates. The medjool dates, which are so delicious.
Yeah.
And it's not about just having, it's just, I literally can feel my legs, just that real tingling in the inside of my thighs. And if I'm wearing compression, they become so uncomfortable. The swelling is just, I'm just I want to get these off. And I think that is one of our key kind of gifts as stage 1, is we can really eat intuitively. And a lot of the later stages, it's really hard to, because you can't kind of connect to that feeling as easily. There is a lot more inflammation. There's a lot more stuff going on there, lots more swelling, where stage 1 is sometimes looking normal in the morning. And then by the end of the day, you're a little bit more swollen. Or if you are inflamed, it's very easily to see, but also get back to that base.
Point. And, as I look back at my life when probably I was stage 1 and didn't know it, that was true for me as well. Situations were very large, but it was sort of dependent on my approach to my lifestyle, I suppose, at the time.
And a lot of the times we are stage 1, think about it, we are out partying. We are, in that stage, not always, because you can still be stage 1 later on. But a lot of that time when we are younger, we are out partying. Next day, you're not really at home a lot because you don't want to be around your parents. And so you don't have access to a kitchen. You don't have much money. So you're kind of like getting takeaway a lot. So you are kind of reacting a lot. But it's, again, trying to pinpoint that because you're putting it back down to, I've been eating fast food, I've been drinking, and it just all gets bundled into one to really kind of put it down to something's really, really not right.
Fascinating and so true. Okay, so we've talked about your personal journey with lipedema a little bit. Now I want to get on to your work as a clinical nutritionist and specifically how you approach and support other women managing lipedema.
I love this because, you know, when you just find you go into, like, I started in children's nutrition, and then it obviously, once I became when I was diagnosed, it pushed me this way, but it really became out of the not feeling like I fit in within the community. So it was not feeling like I fit in with the regular world, and then being diagnosed, not fitting in with the community. And it just started by opening up a space for others in the community, not thinking I was going to really start doing it as, you know, my specialist field, but just wanting to have more of a Facebook online community presence, to kind of help others just not look at those photos and just think there's just so much doom and gloom at the end of it. Because when you're a stage 1, and back when I was diagnosed, I thought that it meant I had to be a stage 3. You know, it was just about how many years until I became that. And it's a very scary thing to think of like that. There is so much fear in that. So over time, just being a part of that, realizing I actually am helping myself, and I've always been helping myself without realizing I was helping myself or how or why. And listening to Dr. Herbst, reading a couple of those books and stuff, and being like, I already did all this without having to have this information. This was just all myself, trial and error, the education obviously behind it, and realizing how the body works. And that's where I was like, I can actually really help these, you know, women within the same, you know, position. And so that's just where it started. And it's just really trying to help women find a way of eating that really suits not only their preference to how they want to eat and enjoy and show up, but obviously help their body work the best it can. Because it's so easy to just say this is what everyone needs to eat, but everyone can't achieve it.
That's so true. We're not robots.
Exactly. We're not robots. Whether it's not even, it can be as simple as what you have access to. Like, it doesn't actually just have to be down to how strict someone can be, you know, what they think that they have to be eating. And if they have a really good self-control, it's not just that simple, but also you've got to live your life. Like, you want to be able to live your life. Some people need that discipline, need to just, you know, be restrained between these fine lines. And that's good. You know, that's what they want to do. But there's so many other people who want to still be able to go and have dinner with friends, and, you know, so I help them find that balance. And it's to come up with a plan together. And we are most often not always just dealing with lipedema. There are so many other conditions, underlying things that we have to factor in. And that's actually what we end up dealing with mostly, because when you take it all away, as much as we in the community see and hear how everyone is so individual, which we are, and there's so many different approaches, and that's so confusing for so many people, because where do you start? You look at all this information, but it actually is a lot more simple than we realize. And that's what coming to a practitioner can help people, you know, uncover.
So over your time, as you've been supporting more and more women with lipedema, have you found any specific interesting things about the condition and about women who live with the condition?
The thing that interests me the most, that I find that just blows my mind, is really about the gag, just really about that, you know, the leaking vessels and capillaries and lymph, and how it then just feeds and turns into that gel. And to me, that makes the most sense, because over years, as much as I've been able to say I have swelling, I couldn't just take a diuretic and it'd go. That just doesn't happen. So it was that once I finally had the answer, after that latest research was, uncovered, that just like kind of, to me, felt like there was a lot more that I could go and uncover, that I could go and see what go and research. What can we do to help this gag? How do we help break it down? How do we help it not build up? That was the most interesting. And that's what we, all have. And that's what we really all struggle with. And that kind of, to me, is like a real key, area of this is, this is how we can kind of combat and keep it in control.
Food, is that what you're saying?
Well, in the stage 1, it's a lot easier to do with food, but it really comes down as well. Like for me, it's a real to and fro. It's not something that I can keep under all the time. And that is so weather dependent, stress, whatever else I'm going through at that time. I think that's one thing we all hold on to hope, that we've found an answer, that we are, we get our weight down, we get our pain down, we're all under control, and then boom, it's back again. And everyone kind of feels really deflated and defeated. But I think we just have to realize that we kind of go up and down. And but we know how to just kind of keep getting ourselves back down and reducing that inflammation when we can.
Awesome. You touched on it earlier, but I just wanted to expand on a little bit. Do you also assist women supporting their nutrition throughout their cycles?
Yes. So one of the main things that a nutritionist does is digestion and gut health, but also your menstrual cycle. So that is a key element. So if anyone out there is wondering if, they need some help or support with their cycle, you want to that has to be, I determine like a lot of my own health and a lot of my clients' health via their cycle, just making sure that they have a healthy regular cycle, that the length is long enough, that the luteal stage is long enough, that it's not too short, so it supports the progesterone, so that it supports up to menstruation. That it's such a key into understanding what's going on hormonally in your body, and that we know that hormones also play a big role in lipedema.
Definitely do, and that's what's kind of confusing as someone who identifies with having a very healthy, normal, by the book cycle. I align that with all of my, like with my health market and be like, well, if my cycle is good, then I must be healthy. I'm sure there's other things that play into that, but I dare say eating and working out according to my cycle would still be beneficial, even if my cycle is a healthy cycle, right?
Yes, because then it doesn't mean that it's going to affect just that part of your cycle, but it's also going to help the detoxing and preparing your body for how it's going to respond during the certain times of your cycle, on how well it detoxes, how well it's going to reduce swelling and inflammation. So learning about your cycle, making sure that you're ovulating every month, because a lot of women, we don't get taught this in school. It's something that I'm going to teach Savannah. I'll be letting Savannah know, so that hopefully she doesn't have to go on the contraception pill when she, gets of a certain age, like we all kind of felt like we had to, because it's our responsibility as females. I think how empowering would that be to have known that, instead of just being like, quick, go on the pill because I don't want to fall pregnant.
Yeah. I wish I could have avoided all of that exogenous hormones over all of those pivotal times in my life where I should have been more healthy.
I know.
Can you, just thinking about some takeaways for our community, and probably sticking more to that, like hormonal health, nutritional health during your cycle, are there any quick tips for each of the 4 stages nutritionally of your cycle?
Well, I think it really, if we go through the bleed, you really, I love to think of that as, you really want to concentrate on your warm, like really keeping your womb warm in that stage. So real easy digestible foods, warming foods. So, nourishing your body that way. But when we come to the follicular stage, that's when it's interesting, because that's when we can tolerate more of the carbs.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to, and you'll notice, like, you wake up, that's when your clothes fit the best. That's when you feel the most energy. That's when you can exercise harder, but you want to keep it lower carb to support the next stage.
Right.
And so that when we go into the luteal stage, that's when your body kind of needs more of the carbs to support your lining, and we need the carbs to create, the progesterone. So we actually have to eat that, but our body doesn't cope as well with detoxing, with the swelling. So if we eat the lower carb in that first follicular stage, that will help us cope more with the higher carbs in the second stage. And so one thing to remember is, you always crave sugar when, you're just about to get your cycle and
Yeah, I do.
during that time. Yeah. It's actually not sugar, it's carbs. Your body just needs carbs. So you're better off to don't grab the chocolate, make more, like, it's hard. It's so much easier said than done. But, I always give my clients this really delicious chocolate dream smoothie. And, it's got banana and it's got some collagen and some raw cacao and avocado. And it's, fulfilling, and it satisfies, that part that you want for the chocolate, but it gives your body what it needs so that it can help produce that lining if you want to fall pregnant.
I don't have any problems with that.
Exactly. But also fasting. So a lot, we do intermittent fasting a lot. That's very, spoken about in the community. You should only do in that first follicular stage and not in the second, if you're working to your cycle.
I have practiced fasting for many years, obviously not at the moment, but I do find that it is harder to fast, closer to my menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
And so, I just back off a bit, but it became habitual. So, my body would get hungry at the time I would usually eat. So it was less about fasting and more about just like, I don't have to think about food until midday sort of thing. But there were times closer to my cycle that I'd be like, oh, I'm hungry and it's only like 10:30, 11. Oh, well, I'll eat something. No big deal.
Yeah. And which I think that's, again, it's hard when you have a chronic condition. There are so many rules out there and we're so scared and there's so much fear that we actually then forget to kind of check in and listen to ourselves. We also have diet culture telling us that feeling hungry means that we're going to be skinny. So it kind of just feeds into this really obsessive and toxic narrative.
Well, I remember always when I was starting to fast, it was like, hunger is not an emergency. And that's what I would play in my head. Hunger is not an emergency. And that is so diet culture and so not.
So
like, it's not good.
Yeah. And it really is hard when you do start fasting as well, because you are going to think about food all the time. So then you actually aren't realizing your natural hunger cues. And that's why it's really good to, instead of just going straight to that 16-hour fast, start at 13 and do that for a week. Next week, go to the 14 and just gradually build up, and your body will get used to it and you'll be able to listen to your body more intuitively on what it really needs. And if you are hungry, absolutely eat. And it depends what you're doing as well, work-wise. Do you need the brain power? We need carbs for if we've, need to use our brains a lot.
As well, because, I find that to be true. And then when you go to the fasting community, they talk about how ketones give you clarity of mind and everything. So it's really hard to know. And I guess like maybe if you get into ketosis when you're fasting, which is pretty hard, I must say, for women after, 14 to 16 hours to get into deep ketosis. I don't think that's unless you're doing keto or low carb all the time.
And your body has to get used to being fat adapted. So those things that everyone kind of raves about and everything, these things take time. And, there's a huge keto community. It helps a lot of women. I think if that's what you want to do and it works well for you, it's something that for me, I know I can do it differently. So I would like to do that because I don't want to feel like I've failed if I'm breaking or getting out of ketosis. I want to still eat pizza and I definitely still want to have a vodka. So I'm going to do that.
I love that so much. And I especially love the pizza comment because in my first trimester, pizza was pretty much the only food that had most of the food groups in it that I could stomach. I thought of. It was pizza, delicious.
Oh, and isn't it fun? And that's just to actually protect you, which is funny because back in the day when it was protected you from not eating a poisonous substance or an off food, we didn't have pizza back then, right? But so that's just nature's way. But unfortunately now we get so repulsed by food in that first trimester, which again, like, is just protect us. But we can then go for those processed foods, which weren't available back then.
About it that way, because I was talking to someone today, and I was wondering, sorry, this episode's not about my pregnancy, but I digress.
Everything's about your pregnancy.
Yeah, right now. But I was talking to somebody saying, at this time when I'm like growing another human, wouldn't protein be the most fundamental like macronutrient that I need? How can I not stomach the thought of cooking a steak, a piece of salmon, or a piece of meat?
You don't need it in the first trimester because the child doesn't have a placenta yet, the baby, the fetus, and it's feeding off your uterine lining, which is rich in all the stuff that it needs.
It's very interesting.
So your baby will be healthy.
Yeah, but the baby will be healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Your blood sugar is going to go through the roof and make you feel more sick, but that's fine.
That's fine. Oh my God, I'm going to stop talking about pregnancy. Let's get back to lipedema. I'm keen to know from you, what are some key signs of stage 1 lipedema?
Definitely always look at the knees. I think that is a really big giveaway for the early stages, and a lot more like later in the day. Like, we can wake up and kind of see a knee. And early stages, like if we're looking at our teenage daughters and things like that, it's going to be the texture. So as much as you won't see so much of that denting or the rippled or the cellulite, it's when you feel the skin, and this is not for everyone, but a majority, it's really soft. And so it can also be like a soft dough because there might not be any nodules under the skin because it's so early on. There's not much fibrosis. And that's a really typical one. There's a really good test for anyone who doesn't get pain, but there's a point, and maybe we can find and put a link up or something under, when you get it to Instagram, of where you pinch just under your knee on the upper bit of your calf. And when you pinch that, it hurts in almost everyone that has it. And there's another one just near your ankle as well. I can't remember where that spot is, but that is pretty mind-blowing. And I'll try and find who it was by that has come out and discovered, and telling everyone to do that. But also just remembering it doesn't have to be disproportionate. We get this, pear-shaped, we get this ankle cuff, and that we think that this is what has to be. But if you have it, say like me, even from such a young age, in my arms and my legs all over, I never got a pear-shaped body because my arms were very, in proportion to my legs with, the thickness. So I could never just say it was just my legs that would gain weight and not my, upper body, because it was gaining weight. So I think that's a really important thing to just kind of, I know they're typical signs, but the early signs are, very hard to spot. Bruising is another really easy one to see because you'll kind of bruise. Even those little like spider veins might kind of appear really early on. And then the cellulite. So even shaking your legs and you'll see, a lot more of the cellulite appearance, or if you ran and pretty much in the sun, because you can, again, like stage 1, we can look normal for a good majority of the time if we're not inflamed.
It's really good, important for our community to, and I identify with a lot of those symptoms from when I was in, when I had after puberty and throughout my young adult life. So yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, see, I didn't. It's really hard because I've always been a big girl, so that was my only focus, was that I was overweight. So
so you're just trying to lose weight.
Yeah, that was all. It was just about losing weight. That was it. Like,
and that's actually a really interesting point, Shell, because we don't have any talk about, let's say, obesity in teenagers, early adults, to then how do we typically spot that? That's actually something that we need to get out to, like, be thought about and actually get into some campaigns. Because just like me saying, when I was thinking that I was diagnosed, like not diagnosed, when I was thinking I had this and I went and researched and looked, I couldn't identify with any of those pictures. So a young girl is not going to identify with a lot of those pictures as well if she then has a thick middle section.
Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely something we need to produce, is just to have all the different facets, all the different looks and presentations, and really get into that.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of that, where can the lipedema community find you?
Pretty much. I have a Facebook group called, look, I don't even remember what it's called because I haven't been on there for so long. And it's late and I can't really blame baby brain anymore, can I? It's Nutrition for Lipedema, a holistic approach. And I have to say, with having Savannah, like I really haven't had a huge priority, focusing on that, but there is a lot of information in there. So once you're in there, there's lots of, old Q&As, videos, a lot of, guides on where to start, recipes. So, that's a really good way just to get in there and have a look. Most of my content and everything is on Instagram, and you can find me under the Lippy Nutritionist. And then everything's kind of connected to my website where you can book in for a consultation. And yeah, that's pretty much how you can find me.
Awesome. We'll put all of that in the show notes so everyone can get up to speed on everything that you've been researching and put together. So I'm going to ask you our favorite question now.
Yes.
If you could go back and give your younger self a pep talk, what would you tell her?
I think I would just keep it super simple, and it would just be, don't let lipedema hold you back from living your best life.
Love that. Yeah.
Exclamation mark.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's too much living on the sideline, putting too much worth in your body when you're such a young age. And, I know the very common one is it's not your fault, but I don't think that identified with me as much, because I really didn't think it was my fault. I just knew there was something wrong.
Yeah. And because you didn't present in a larger body, I think that, for me, it was validation that it isn't because I'm lazy and I eat too much.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that would be more it's not my fault.
Absolutely.
My body's doing this crazy thing.
And
but for you, that...
Yeah, because that is stage 1 superpower, right? Is that we look normal in clothes. Take our clothes off, put a bikini on, put the sunlight on us, and it's like we're, got a really shrunk kind of obese body, if that makes sense, just with the shape of our limbs.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have discrimination. There's no fat shaming when we're in clothes. We can fit in perfectly normal into the regular community if we've got clothes on.
That's a beautiful thing.
It is, but it's also sad.
Well, like
it
you
doesn't
said,
get
you
picked
don't
up.
feel like you're accepted by the community.
No, I know. It just sucks. That's the community. That's what I've been more about it.
That's all communities, because as I've said before, like, because I'm a size 18, I'm too big for the normal sizes, but I'm not plus size enough for the plus sizes. And I'm like, over here being the little fringe dweller that I am, because I don't actually fit into a community properly.
And isn't that weird, where we just have to fit into these boxes no matter what we are trying to achieve? Yeah. There's still so many rules and regulations for each little one. Yeah.
We'll create our own.
Living in the grey.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight, Aimee. It's been so good to speak to you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me on.
You're most
we
welcome.
can't wait to speak to you again one day.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe I'll be pregnant then.
Oh,
I'm not trying.
You can start whinging to me about all the first trimester symptoms.
Yeah, I'll be like, I ate broccoli.
How?
You're allowed pizza. It's okay.
Teach me how.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aimee. See you later.
You're so welcome. Bye.
Bye. When we started the Lipoedema podcast, we relied on word of mouth and existing connections.
Our following has happened organically, and we are so honoured by your support.
As we learn more about the world of social media and algorithms, we have a request.
When you are listening to our podcast or watching on YouTube, let us know what you think.
Hit follow or subscribe.
Leave us a comment or write a review.
The more engagement we get, the more our message is shared.
And the greater our reach to those women suffering in silence.
Thank you for listening to the Lipoedema podcast. Lipoedema and its symptoms vary from individual to individual. The opinions and advice voiced in this podcast are of a personal nature and used for educational purposes.
Please take away from this podcast what resonates with you, and please see your GP or preferred specialist for diagnosis and healthcare. We are Shelley and Tiana from the Lipoedema podcast. Until our next episode, bye for now.